Hello and welcome to Driving Systems of High Performance, a podcast all about how teams successfully use data and insights to expedite the move from strategy to action. I'm Nick Polce, and today I'm joined by special guest Otmar Szafnauer, founder of Soft Pauer and previously team principal at Alpine, Aston Martin and Force India F1 teams. We're sitting down live from the Accenture office in Melbourne in advance of the Australian Grand Prix. Formula One is really a team sport. There are two drivers there on race day, but there's a huge team behind them.
About 1,000 people per team.
How do you line them up to the strategy, the broader strategy around building the race car and then executing on race day?
It's a good question. Formula One's a little bit easier than other businesses, for example, because again, you have to measure your output. And for us, we measure lap time. It's really, really simple. Everybody
one metric to rule them all, isn't it?
Exactly. It's all about lap time. It's all about how fast you can go, and that's an easy measure. But then underneath that lap time, you have 1,000 people trying to gain lap time. How do you align them? And Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And if you have a racing culture, if you have that competitive drive in everybody to do not what's best for themselves, but what's best for the team, it's amazing what you can achieve. It's amazing what you can achieve. So you need that culture. And the other saying that, I don't know who said this, that was Peter Drucker, but I used to always say, so first culture, make sure you have that competitive mentality. Everybody's pulling in the same direction. And then secondly, you can't fix a bad strategy with good tactics. So make sure your strategy is right before you go into tactics. Because if your strategy is wrong, you can have the best tactics in the world, you're not going to achieve. But how do you get everyone pulling in the same direction? For a high-performing team, and I think at Force India we had this. We only had 400 employees, and we finished fourth quite often. Now if you're same 10 teams, if you're fourth, it's an achievement, and we did it with no money, no people. Shouldn't say no people, but a quarter of the people, and probably a tenth of the development budget of some of the others. And the way you do it again is culture. And the most important thing for a high-performing team is psychological safety. So everybody within that team knows they're allowed to explore boundaries, push boundaries, and when they make a mistake, they're helped by their teammates. They're not chastised for taking risks and failing. They're actually encouraged to take calculated risks and learn from their failures. And that's really, really easy to say. It's hard to do because we're humans.
Yeah. And how did you go about that? What are some tangible examples?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of easy because I don't know why. I don't know if it's inborn or learned, but I'm a pretty empathetic person, right? So I can put myself in other people's shoes, understand what they're feeling in that situation, and make sure I treat them like I would want to be treated. Simple, hard to do. The best thing for a leader to do in those situations is when that leader makes a mistake, because we all do, and sometimes leaders make even more mistakes than the people they're leading, is raise your hand and say, you know what, I tried really hard. I didn't see this coming. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I will learn from this. And as your leader, trust me, I won't make this mistake again. And then those people that you're leading, when they hear you say that, they think, you know what, he's my boss, or he's the boss of this team, and he screwed up and raised his hand. It's okay for me to make a mistake because people will help me, and he can now not look at me and say, hey, why'd you screw up?
So it's really about embodying the behaviors you want the rest of the team to
Exactly.
try.
Now, if you screw up over and over and over, right, maybe you're not right for the job, and we got to have a discussion. But, you've got to make those mistakes over and over, same mistake. If you're on a basketball team, for example, and you're not really a good free throw shooter or a 3-point shooter, then don't give the guy the ball past the 3-point line and expect them to make it, that kind of thing. So there's limits to it, but psychological safety, the biggest thing. And it's amazing what teams can do when you have that psychological safety, because everybody then is aligned to the goal of the team. They don't care about what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
When you don't have psychological safety, just marginally, everyone's thinking about, if I do this and it goes wrong, what's going to happen to me? They don't do it. Take the safe route. And the safe route, when others are at a high performance level and you're not, you're taking the safe route, guess what? You're not going to beat them.
That's a great takeaway. F1, racing is basically a technology sport now, and you alluded to it a little bit earlier. I think most organizations grapple with this. How do you determine what you're going to build versus buy from a technology perspective?
Yeah, so I'll take a half step backwards. 1,000 people on a team, the math is easy. 998 of them are engineers, technicians, aerodynamicists, mechanics, support people, marketeers. 2 of them are athletes out of 998. So although people say, yeah, we're a sport, we're really a Formula One team is a technology development business, right? That's what we're doing. We are developing a car to go around the track quicker based on some regulations that are set out by the FIA, and we're competing with others to do the best job. But that's really what we do. Make versus buy decisions. I alluded to some software that we would buy and then enhance it. Before cost cap, we used to do a lot of things differently. But you make things in-house where you have a strategic advantage because you're not buying something somebody else can buy. So all those things that you believe you can do better than a third party that will also sell to a different team, you do that yourself. And when you do it yourself, you got to make sure that you're going to be better than what the others can buy or what the others can do. And that's how we make those make versus buy decisions. Aerodynamics, for example, by regulation, your aero package can't be bought from somebody else. It's got to be yours. It can be bought from a third party, but that third party can then not sell to anybody else. So the aero design is yours. There's other things you can buy and share. Gearboxes, for example, powertrains, that kind of stuff, tires, wheels. But you can have third parties make those aero components for you. And the reason you do them yourself is because of the time it takes from knowing or having a good idea that this new aero package will make your car go faster. Once you have that knowledge that's come out of CFD in the tunnel, like I said, and you've got a good idea that you have good correlation, and you said, right, new aero package. Once you know that car is going to go faster with a new aero package, you want it tomorrow.
Yeah.
You want it tomorrow. And because if you have it tomorrow, guess what? You're 0.2 of a second quicker. You're going to beat the other guys. And if you leave it to a third party to make those components, they could take their time, maybe not work a weekend, or maybe their consideration is profit, not speed. And you don't want that.
Yeah.
You want to do that yourself. This car that we have now today in these regulations, it's changing in 2026. One of the biggest influencer of aerodynamic performance, one of the key parts is the floor, right? Where before you used to have flat floors and they just went along for the ride except for the diffuser at the back. This, you generate most of the downforce through the floor. The wings a little bit. When I got to Alpine, in-house manufacturing, they're making floors in 14 weeks. From out of the tunnel to on the car. 14 weeks. At Aston, when I left Aston, we're doing them in 8. I thought, why so long? they didn't know any better. They didn't. I had to look at the manufacturing process. I figured out why so long. But what I did was I called the manufacturing people into my office and the operations director who was in charge of manufacturing. And I didn't tell them, hey, look, I know where I came from. We're making floors in 8 weeks. I'm a new boss. I didn't want to look down on them. Again, that empathy, psychological safety. So I got him into my office and I called the operations director at Red Bull, Paul Field. Got him on the phone. He said, Otmar, how's it going? He used to work for me at British American Racing. I said, I'm well, Paul. Thanks. I said, just out of curiosity, how long does it take you to make a floor when you have a new one that's come out of the tunnel? He said, it takes us 6 weeks. I said, okay, thanks. With the people in front of me listening. I called Graham Miller at Mercedes, who also worked for me, and I said, Graham, how long does it take you to make a floor once you get it out of the tunnel? 7 weeks. I said, okay. And they heard this. They went away. Within 2 months, we were making them in 7 weeks. You know what your competition is doing? If you're buying that floor from somebody and it's 14 weeks, there's no way you're going to change it to 7. You're now relying on somebody else to say, hey, 14's too long. And there's no incentive for them to make it shorter. The air incentive is a bit of profit. Yeah. So that's kind of how you make versus buy decisions, all based on competitive advantage. So what gives you a competitive advantage? That's what you want to do.
It's another great takeaway. You're talking about technology, pushing boundaries. How much space do you have to innovate in a highly regulated sport like F1?
So F1, it changes all the time. You know, the rules change, and the new owners, being American, again, you know, they're driven by valuation, profits, all sorts of stuff. And them coming from North America, they did some great things, one of which was cost cap, right? So their philosophy, right, when they came in was that in sport, now mind you, 2 sportsmen, what you don't want, and your fans, is predictability. When you go watch a game and you know the outcome at the end, say it was recorded, it happened 2 days ago, and you know the outcome, are you going to be happy watching it? Maybe a little bit, but not as happy as if you're there live and you don't know what the outcome is. What's more exciting than at the very end, whether you're a soccer fan or a rugby fan, when the score changes and your team wins and it was just down within the last 3 seconds? Nothing. That's sport. So they had this philosophy of, you know, we don't want Mercedes to win 7 championships in a row and Lewis winning everything, or Michael Schumacher when he was at Ferrari. We want variability because that will give the fans, more enjoyment. So because of that, they started with regulations that were more restrictive, such that the solutions that the teams came up with didn't vary so much. And I think it was the NFL in America where at one point it was, unless you were the Dallas Cowboys or Washington Redskins or the San Francisco 49ers, you had no chance to win. And they had this philosophy of on any given Sunday, any team can win. So they brought that philosophy here. On any given Sunday, any team can win. And the way to do that was to restrict the regulations. So the regulations are much more restrictive than they were in the past. And because of it, the lap times are a lot closer. And I think last year we had 7 different winners. So it's working. It's working. But your question is, how do you innovate within all those parameters? You still have some variability. And what that then does is, because you only have a little bit of latitude to innovate, you spend even more time making sure that that latitude that you have, you do the best at, because that will give you your strategic advantage. if all the cars are the same, because there are some formulas, Formula 2, for example, you buy your car, you buy your engine, you buy your tires, you buy everything. All the cars are the same. Then driver matters more, right? Get the best driver. Engineers matter more. But even in a Formula 2 car, that's all the same. You do little things to gain an advantage. You tape up all the little joints of all the panels to make sure you have no aero losses. And the good teams will do it, and other teams won't. So you see differences even in a spec formula. And when the value of winning is high, then you do all those little things to make sure you're the one that's winning.
Excellent. One more from me. Well, I've got two more questions and we'll open it up for some more. So obviously speed is paramount in Formula One. The quicker you go, higher chances of winning. How does safety play into your social conscious equation? Obviously it's heavily regulated, but where do you draw the line between speed and safety from a driver perspective?
So that is regulated. Safety is something that goes into the design philosophy and parameters that we set out before the car is designed and made. So for example, we used to, and probably still do, we used to, again, good data to make good decisions. Because the cars are instrumented, you know what kind of loads the suspension, for example, will see. And you take the worst load case or the highest load that the suspension will ever see, and we used to multiply it by 1.5 and design to that safety margin. So we'd have a 50% safety margin. Now you could say, well, why not 2? Why not 3? Why not 4? The higher you go, the heavier the part is. And the heavier the part is, the less it performs. So in Formula One, we used to always say, you want infinite stiffness, infinite load capability, and zero weight. And, you can't do those things. So you have to have a good compromise where you're not going to fail. You're not going to kill a driver. You're not going to kill some spectators. I think we had a failure here on Jacques Villeneuve's car in 2000, and his wheel went through a gap in a barrier and killed a marshal. You don't want to do that. And at the time, we didn't have tethers. So the FIA regulated tethers on the tires, and what a great safety innovation. I think it was John Surtees' son at Brands Hatch in a Formula 3 race. He wasn't involved in the crash. He made the right turn past the front straight. There's a crash behind him, well behind him. One of the wheels let go, and high energy, right? So you got speed, energy equals 1/2 mv squared. So that square to that velocity, he made the right turn, the wheel's bounding, and hit him in the head and killed him. Tethers, FIA regulated, thank God. Halo. I'm sure you all saw Grosjean take a right turn in wherever we were and go through the Armco and catch fire, and without that halo, no Romain Grosjean. So all those safety measures, FIA driven, but not by everything. There's some stuff that we do ourselves to make sure that every designer in Formula One, every engineer, safety's paramount. You don't want to hurt anybody.
Okay. My last question. Season ahead. Any predictions for
the
group?
Go bet on McLaren. They got to have second advantage from testing. Probably Oscar's your favorite because he's hometown boy. But if you want to make money, bet on Lando.
There you go. You heard it first, and it's being recorded, so we can review this at the end of the season to see how good your prediction is.
Yeah.
Any questions?
And if you want to hedge your bets, bet on both.
There we go.
The odds are a lot different. So,
check question.
Those 2-1.
Yeah, hi. F1 is technology driven. So similar to, I can compare that with all the fighter jets. So today the 5th generation, 5.5, 6th generation fighter jets, they're coming with AI. There are a lot of components which is managed by AI? How much of AI is there for the driver to make decisions, to get out of the emotional thinking and,
Yeah, so that's done by his engineer, and the driver and the engineers review together the data, and some of that data that is filtered through artificial intelligence is then used, and the driver will he'll ask, but you got to remember the driver is the one in the car feeling, and the best ones have been doing it since they're 4 years old, so they will have an innate feeling. Not innate, it's learned of what's happening with the car, and they will use the data to confirm and verify. So when that all matches what he's feeling and the data says the same, then all right, this is what we're going to do to go faster. But yeah, that's used between driver and engineer to optimize the car for the specific event.
Hey, thanks, Omar. How much does the driver matter? Because I think this is a question that I've seen going around in forums forever, right? You have 998 people focusing on getting that
little bit,
that pen, right? And then you have the greatest there, but then you say they had the greatest car as well. Is it a coincidence? How much does the driver actually matter?
So the driver is probably the easiest thing to change in Formula One. You can just tell this guy to get in the car and that guy to get out. It's an easy change to make. It's easier than changing aerodynamic configurations or putting new parts on the car or suspension layouts. Driver's easy to change. And it's a technology innovations business that we're in. I always say it's 80% car, 20% driver. And when it's raining, it's 70% car, 30% driver. But having said that, if you look at Red Bull last year, you had Max Verstappen, who won it, and Sergio Perez, who finished, 8th in the championship. And Sergio's a competent driver. He used to drive for me. So that too tells you how much a driver can matter. And Max, I think, is probably today the best driver in Formula One, and he probably won't win it this year. And why is that? Because his car is not good enough. So although drivers matter, I think the car matters more. But you need the combination of good driver and good car to win. And I always tell people in Formula One, you need more than that. You've got to do everything to a high level of competency, and some things best in class, better than any other team. So everything, you can't have anything that's not at high level of competency. And the things that matter the most, you got to be the best at. And driver, high level of competency.
That's right. I think we got one more question here.
All right, this is Ming. I'm just curious, if you restart your career again, all over again, what are the big decision or big moment you would do differently?
What would I do differently? I would start racing at an earlier age. I was too old when I started racing. I would actually convince my parents to spend the money on go-karting instead of soccer. That only got me like a bad knee. From an education perspective, I think having an engineering degree and an MBA helps. So I don't think I would do that differently. I think I just lucked into that. But I would definitely start earlier. I would start earlier. Racing's been a passion since I was young, and I started a little bit too late. Nico Hülkenberg, for example, and, I'm different. I raced in 55 open wheel races. I'd never had a chance at all, but I didn't know it. I thought I was going to be world champion. Everyone was laughing at me, and they were right to laugh, but at least I tried. Hülkenberg started racing at 7 years old, and he says he was at least 1 year too late, or maybe 2. So you got to start early. So something happens, and my daughter is now studying neuroscience. I don't even know what that is at university, but hopefully she can enlighten me. But I think something happens in your brain where what you learn when you're young creates different pathways and more efficient pathways in your brain than what you learn when you're older. So I should have started when I was younger. I think that holds true for like ice skating and snow skiing and all sorts of stuff.
I think it's a great way to end the session. The hour has just flown by. Thank you all for being here in attendance. And Otmar, thank you so much for giving up your time. So,
round of applause. Thank you.
thank you for joining us for Driving Systems of High Performance, a podcast about teamwork. Thank you as well to our special guest, Otmar Szafnauer, for sharing his insights today. You can check out more about Otmar, as well as the work Accenture is doing on large-scale transformations, using the links in our show notes. We'll be back with more conversations soon. Follow us now in your podcast app, and you won't miss an episode.